The Aries new moon solar eclipse occurred, gosh, about 18 odd hours ago, I would say. Last night for me, I'm recording this video at around noon on April the 20th Pacific time, and it happened for me about 9:12 p.m. Yesterday, April the 19th. You know that I like to do my new moon videos after the new moon, and so this is what I am doing. And I have a feeling there will be a series of videos, maybe a part two, as I present more information. I like to keep my videos to about 20 odd minutes and not too much more than that. So there will probably be more videos. There's certainly a video that needs to be done on the Mercury retrograde cycle that starts tomorrow. So close to this new moon solar eclipse, and gives this new moon solar eclipse such particular and characteristic quality. Let's cover a few basics first. They're always worth remembering. It's a new moon. It's the second new moon in Aries this year. The first new moon in Aries occurred 28 days ago on March the 21st. And that particular new moon was conjunct Mercury. Anyway, there's a separate video on that, and you can always go back and take a look at it. So we've had one new moon in Aries already, and this is a second new moon, which is also a solar eclipse. When I did the Libra full moon video, so we had an Aries new moon, a Libra full moon, and now we have the Aries, second Aries new moon, which is also a solar eclipse. When I did the Libra full moon video, I did two parts to it, and the second part talked about getting back on the horse. If you know where the sign of Aries sits in your chart, what house it occupies and what it stands for, fundamentally, the Aries new moon and solar eclipse is a call to come back to that part of the chart. No matter what the shenanigans and distractions and craziness may have accompanied you over the past few months, there's a need to use all that and use all that data and come back to the Aries part of your chart, especially through May the 16th. Now, May the 16th is the date when Jupiter, which is currently in Aries, moves into Taurus. Jupiter, after it moves into Taurus, will not be back to Aries for another 12 or 13 years. And Jupiter, wherever it transits, is trying to create an ending and an auspicious new beginning. So, with everything that is being processed, has been processed, very important if you know your chart and you know where Aries sits, to establish, try to get clear on what these new beginnings are in this part of the chart, and to come back to them, to refocus on them, to articulate them to yourself if you want. Something that could be really well supported by any Mercury retrograde cycle, which calls for a need to pause, to pay attention to what is being uncovered and presented to you that was in your blind spot, and to reconsider all the forward movement that has been going on since last January when Mercury was direct last. So if you look back to something like January 19th or 20th, when Mercury became direct again in Capricorn, to tomorrow, consider all the forward movement that occurred, particularly as you headed towards February the 12th and into March and into early April. Consider all the forward movement that has occurred, and consider that you are moving forward in a particular way and may not know certain things that may be in your blind spot. And Mercury retrograde dates, specifically April the 21st and then May the 14th, 15th, whenever Mercury goes direct wherever you are dates when, and during this time period, roughly 3 week time period, is when information may be brought to you that you may not be completely aware of. Very important, ideally, to respond and not react to this information. Sometimes this information can be jarring. It can uncover things that have been going on behind the scenes, or things that are unclear, and present information to you, and that can be quite unnerving. I didn't know this. I didn't know they thought that way. I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know. Great. Rather than go into a whole kerfuffle about it and start to splash around, because it is not necessarily a time to communicate. It is not necessarily a time to articulate. It is not a time to sign contracts. It is not a time for decision making. It is a time to sit back and go, now that I know this, what does this mean? And how do I factor it into the forward movement that has been occurring since about January 19th, but particularly since, I would say, the end of January, beginning of February, till, let's say, about 4 or 5 days ago. Okay. Um, Remember, I told you it was a new moon video, but Mercury retrograde would feature heavily. This particular time where we are at today, April the 20th, April the 19th, 18th would be characterized. So the new moon occurred for me on April the 19th at 9:12 p.m. So let's say about 18 odd hours ago, if that. The time period as you head towards a new moon, and particularly a new moon solar eclipse, could have a certain amount of energy depletion, but is marked by endings because it is as a result of endings that new beginnings are created. And with a new moon, first and foremost, I always say that from a full moon to a new moon, the wave is pulling back away from the shore, and especially those 48 hours before a new moon can feel energetically depleted and be very much concerned with endings, and particularly ending the cycle that started for us on March the 21st. So the endings could still have a very strong Aries focus. But now, with this new moon that just occurred less than 24 hours ago, the wave is going to start to move towards the shore again. And as you head towards the Scorpio eclipse on May the 5th, yummy. Um, the on that date the wave is going to crash to the shore. It's going to peak in energy and crash to the shore. So the next couple of weeks, but give it another 24, 48 hours, 72 hours for you to really feel the momentum. In a lot of traditions, it's when the moon is a crescent, a thin crescent, and visible again, when you can actually palpably start to feel the energy. And until then, it may still feel a little flat. But the new moon has happened, so you can start to move forward. Now, new moon, solar eclipse. Eclipses, the vortex, the center of this particular eclipse period started about a week ago and continues to a week after May the 5th, which let's say is May the 12th or so. So a week ago, April 13th or thereabouts, to May the 5th is what I would constitute the heart of this eclipse cycle. We just had the solar eclipse. With the solar eclipse over the next 6 months, energy escalates, this time moving towards the Taurus lunar eclipse, another important fact at the end of October. So that's sort of the 6-month cycle. There's a handoff during this period from the Taurus North Node eclipses to the eclipses in Aries. And this is a transition year. Till this year, for the past couple of years, the eclipses were happening on the Taurus-Scorpio axis. The last Scorpio eclipse occurs in 2 weeks' time on May the 5th. The last Taurus eclipse occurs, I think, on October the 30th. Am I losing my mind? Shall we check that date? October the 28th. October the 28th. And so this particular new moon solar eclipse starts a 6-month cycle that looks towards October the 28th, the Taurus full moon lunar eclipse. Okay, fine. The connection between the signs of Taurus and Aries are very pronounced at the time of this particular eclipse that we just had yesterday. The North Node is still in Taurus, and we are meant to lean into and develop skills and strengths and put our energy into the sign of Taurus currently, and now the sign of Aries. Fundamentally, I'm going to come back to the single most important point I'm going to convey again in this video, which is it is time to make note of where Aries sits in your chart, what house it occupies, what that house stands for, and to come back to it with everything that you know and have learned and have been distracted by possibly over the past few weeks or months. The Taurus part of the chart is going to become very active and has already seen some blessings. That is a separate video that I'm going to do on the Taurus part of the chart. The Sun enters Taurus tomorrow. Mercury goes retrograde tomorrow and is going to spend its entire retrograde cycle in Taurus. We'll go direct on May the 14th, and there we go. Okay, so new moon, solar eclipse. Eclipses, a time, as I like to say, when God takes the wheel. If you have Mercury direct in your chart, you may likely feel this solar eclipse more around the Gemini new moon around June the 19th. With a solar eclipse, the next important date, April 19th is the solar eclipse. June the 19th would be the next one, the week before, week after. August 28th, week before, week after, and then October 28th, week before, week after. The August 28th and October 28th dates being more relevant to the sign of Taurus. But Because Mercury goes retrograde 2 days and is, for all intents and purposes, stationary at this time, for those of us who have Mercury direct in our birth charts, in our natal charts, the endings and new beginnings are present, but the larger question is, what is it that you need to incorporate into your plans that is in your blind spot? And you may find that the actual movement, clarity of decision making around this eclipse and what it's bringing, and around all the Taurus energies, really occurs at the time of the Sagittarius full moon on June the 3rd. So let's just look at this. April 19th, new moon. Mercury direct again around May the 14th. And one of the important transits that is occurring at the time of this new moon eclipse that just happened yesterday was the fact that Mercury was awfully close to the sign of Uranus in Taurus, but it's not going to conjunct Uranus in Taurus just yet. Just as it heads towards Uranus in Taurus. So think about this. Since April the 3rd, Mercury entered Taurus, and it has transited about, gosh, what do I want to say? 16, 17 degrees, 15, 16, 17 degrees of Taurus. It's gone halfway through the sign of Taurus. It has almost conjuncted Uranus, which is at about 17 or 18 degrees. And now it's going to, before it can conjunct Uranus, it's going to go retrograde. Then on May the 13th, 14th, it goes direct again. And as you head back to June the 3rd, by around June the 5th, Mercury will have conjuncted Uranus. So the most intriguing thing to me about this particular Mercury retrograde cycle is, what is it that prevents Mercury from conjuncting Uranus and reaching this epiphany or creating this freedom, or this event, let's call it that, in the sign of Taurus for you? And why is it delayed till early June? Why is it delayed till early June? What is it? Remember, so new beginnings, and with a new moon, and especially with the solar eclipse, you may get a sense of what is brewing and what is coming your way. New things coming within 48 to 72 hours, certainly a week of a new moon. If you know where Aries sits in your chart, and if you have a sense of connection between what's going on in the Aries and Taurus parts of your chart, you may physically see evidence of new things brewing and coming up that feel like, oh, okay, well, this is what this new moon is bringing. Now, new moons happen every 28 days. I'm not talking about big dramatic things coming to you as a part of the new moon. But they're unmistakable if you're really paying attention. They're unmistakable. I will still say that the primary thing here, the primary aim of this new moon eclipse is to say, come back to the sign of Aries. And till the middle of May, really try and articulate what auspicious new beginnings you have noticed and what auspicious new beginnings you would like to articulate in this part of the chart. While Mercury is retrograde, there's nothing wrong with going internal and going back to the drawing board and at least starting to incorporate learnings and things that are coming up to define what it is that you want out of this part of your chart, as Jupiter for the next 3 weeks or so continues to create this auspicious new beginning, this part of the chart, before he moves into Taurus for about 13 months. Okay, I've said this the third time as to the key purpose of this eclipse. I've also mentioned that whatever is coming up that is new, especially insofar as it relates to the Taurus part of the chart, may not gain clarity, may not reach some sort of completion or conclusion till certainly after Mercury goes direct, but especially as you head towards the Sag full moon on June the 3rd. And then I've also mentioned that around June the 19th, when you have the Gemini new moon, I think it's on the 20th or 21st, the week before, week after that, is when you might really be able to get the real milestone of this April 19th new moon solar eclipse. Eclipses are when God takes the wheel. Changes occur. Fated changes where you do not have control necessarily. And with this particular new moon, you may already have an inkling of what new beginnings are in store for you, or where you'd like to, consider what has ended over the past week and consider what it has made room for. I mean, that's all you need to do, really. Consider what the lessons have been since March the 21st. Incorporate them. Pay attention to, over the next few days, what hidden things are brought to the surface that make you go, I did not know that. How do I incorporate this into my plans? Does it change my plans? Does it make me put less emphasis on this and more emphasis on this? Do I need to find a new venue, a direction I was going in? Do I really think it was going to go the way I thought it was, or is it going to be something different based on what I know? Try to let the universe give you information and try to withhold expressing anything negative around it just yet. Be in questioning, data gathering mode so that you can really understand what it is that the universe is trying to bring to your attention and present to you. And however energizing or disappointing that information may be, let it inform your sense of how that needs to be incorporated as you move forward into the middle of May and into June. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, I am more interested in what happens then for you over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I am very interested. When Mercury goes retrograde, people who have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts experience much more decisive events and feel much more decisive and much more in connection with their cognitive powers and decision-making powers, and tend to move faster during this time than they do in other parts of the year. So my question, if you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, is what has happened in the last week, what continues to happen over the next 3 weeks, and how does that make you feel decisive and clear about how you want to move forward, considering we're talking about a Mercury retrograde, but we're also talking about eclipses occurring during this time that may not be delayed in their changes for you. You may not need to wait till May or June. You may actually experience these changes here. With eclipses and with new moons, with opportunities in general, astrologically, knock on every door and every opportunity that comes your way. Explore every possible option and change and see what opens up for you in a way that feels aligned and alive and positive. And those experiences are the kind where if you're knocking like crazy on 9 doors and for one door you step up to it and barely hold the handle, it swings open and pulls you in. You still have to show up. So if we're talking about jobs, and let's say you're interviewing for 10 positions and 9 of them, you're really keen on 3 or 4 of them, and you're banging your head against a wall, you still, for each of them, including the 10th one, you still have to be prepared, you still have to do your work, you still have to show up as best you can, you still have to show up as someone who has integrity, and you still have to do the work and show up to meet your appointments and present yourself in the way that you need to. You still need to do the work. But ultimately that opportunity or that direction of that eclipse, and also keep in mind with eclipses, mortality, mortality, mortality. People, situations being eclipsed out of your life, eclipsed in your life. Information about people's or loved ones' mortality may come up in significant ways around that time. Either people transition or pass on or die, or you hear information about related to people's mortality with much greater clarity around this time. Changes, situations being eclipsed into your life, eclipsed out of your life. Process started last week and continues for the next 3 or 4 weeks. As I said, if you have Mercury direct in your chart, effects may be felt late May into June, even into the middle of June. Mercury retrograde, you may feel them over the next 3 or 4 weeks, okay? Main transits occurring. Very important to lean into the North Node at this point in time. Again, this is the Taurus and Aries part of your chart, because for some reason leaning into that allows Pluto to make the right kind of transformations and changes and start that process in the Aquarius part of your chart and soon in the Capricorn part of the chart. So Pluto has moved into Aquarius, but it's going to transit back into Capricorn over the next couple of years. It's going to do this thing where it's in Capricorn and Aquarius, finishing up its Capricorn cycle and starting its Aquarius cycle. And for a significant portion of this year, it's going to be squared. The North Node will be squaring it. The North Node is moving faster than Pluto. Pay attention to the North Node. Lean into the North Node. This eclipse that happened is related to the North Node. Move towards making the changes that you feel called to make, that your heart desires, that feel in alignment. Lean into developing those skills and those strengths in a grounded manner with the North Node. Do not fly off the handle. Do not negate your sense of security and move in that direction, because it will allow Pluto to make the right kind of changes. Otherwise, Pluto can be a tricky planet. Mars squares Chiron. Where's Cancer in your chart? What action needs to be taken there to allow Chiron to incorporate the lessons and create the healing that it's trying to create in the Aries part of your chart? And finally, we talked about Mercury conjuncting Uranus, but not completely until June. Now, finally, this new moon eclipse squares Pluto. So pay attention to leaning into and come back to the Aries and Taurus parts of your chart and focus there. Be patient with the Mercury retrograde. Understand what information is being brought to your attention. Incorporate it. Play the long game through June the 19th and see where it goes. But come back to the Aries and Taurus part of your chart with all the distractions and all the juicy learnings that you have incorporated over the past 2 or 3 months. If you found this useful, share, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon on top, the wiggly bell, and you'll be notified when I do new videos. And I will leave it at that. The next video is going to have to be about the Mercury retrograde in Taurus. Thanks. Bye.